On a somber Monday in Louisville, Kentucky, a city still grappling with the echoes of a tragic event, the wheels of justice turned, bringing a long-awaited chapter to a close. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, a palpable sense of history unfolding. A significant chapter in a painful story finally reached a conclusion. The courtroom, a place of legal proceedings and weighty decisions, became the focal point of a nation's attention. The case of Breonna Taylor, a name that has become synonymous with the struggle for justice, a 26-year-old black woman killed in her own home during a late-night raid, hung heavy in the air. The details of that fateful night were etched in the minds of many, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the potential for injustice, became a national symbol of the fight for racial justice and police accountability. Her story ignited protests, sparked conversations, and fueled a movement demanding change. On July 22, 2025, years after the tragic event, the legal proceedings reached a critical juncture. The focus was on Brett Hankison, the former Louisville Metro Police Department detective. He was the only officer convicted on federal charges for the raid that ended Taylor's life, a conviction that many saw as a small step towards justice in a case marred by controversy and unanswered questions. The courtroom was tense, filled with a mix of emotions. Family members, legal representatives, journalists, and concerned citizens awaited the final judgment, each carrying their own hopes and expectations. The weight of the moment was palpable. Hankison's sentencing was seen as a measure of justice, a crucial test of whether the legal system could deliver accountability, and a test of the legal system's willingness to hold law enforcement accountable for their actions, especially in cases involving the loss of innocent lives. After years of legal battles, protests, and public outcry that reverberated across the nation, the federal government charged Hankison with civil rights violations, alleging that he had violated Taylor's constitutional rights. This shifted the focus from state-level acquittals, which had sparked widespread disappointment and anger, to constitutional accountability, a higher standard of justice. U.S. District Judge Rebecca Grady Jennings, presiding over the case, sentenced Hankison to 33 months in prison, a sentence that was met with mixed reactions. A decision that carried immense weight, representing a moment of reckoning in a case that had exposed deep divisions and systemic issues. The sentence was more than a number. It was a statement. It was a declaration of the seriousness of the crime, the violation of civil rights, and its profound impact on the community, particularly the Black community in Louisville and across the nation. For Breonna Taylor's family, who had tirelessly fought for justice, it offered a measure of closure, a sense that their voices had been heard, even if it could never truly undo their devastating loss. Brett Hankison, a name now synonymous with controversy and legal battles, was once a detective with the Louisville Metro Police Department. He was a sworn officer, entrusted with upholding the law and protecting the community he served. His career, like many in law enforcement, was built on a foundation of training, experience, and a commitment to public safety. He was a part of a specialized unit responsible for executing high-stakes search warrants. This unit often dealt with sensitive and potentially dangerous situations, requiring careful planning, precise execution, and adherence to strict protocols. The warrants they served were intended to uncover evidence of criminal activity and bring those responsible to justice. But his career trajectory changed forever on that fateful night when he joined the raid on Breonna Taylor's apartment. This single event would not only alter the course of his life, but also ignite a national conversation about police conduct, accountability, and the use of force. In the chaos of that night, unlike other officers present, Hankison made a decision that would later define his involvement. He fired 10 rounds blindly. This action deviated from standard police procedure and raised serious questions about his judgment and training. Those 10 rounds were fired through a covered patio door and window, with no clear line of sight to any potential threat. This indiscriminate firing pattern would become a central point of contention in the subsequent investigations and legal proceedings. This specific act of firing blindly was a key reason for his dismissal from the Louisville Metro Police Department and his later prosecution. The department determined that his actions violated established protocols and demonstrated a reckless disregard for human life. In a public statement, the police chief condemned his actions, calling them a shocking violation of policy and a grave threat to human life. The chief emphasized the importance of responsible gun handling and adherence to departmental guidelines, highlighting the severity of Hankison's deviation. Hankison first faced state charges for wanton endangerment, a charge that focused on the potential harm his actions caused to the occupants of the neighboring apartments. This was the initial legal response to his conduct during the raid. It's important to note that these initial charges were not directly related to Taylor's death, but rather for endangering the lives of her neighbors, who were also put at risk by the gunfire. This distinction would later become a point of contention and frustration for many. Ultimately, he was acquitted on those state charges, a verdict that sparked widespread disappointment and disbelief. This acquittal fueled public outrage and intensified calls for justice and police accountability. Protests erupted across the nation, demanding further investigation and prosecution. In response to the public outcry and the perceived inadequacy of the state charges, the federal government then stepped in and charged him. These federal charges centered on the allegation that he violated the civil rights of Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend Kenneth Walker, and their neighbors by acting with reckless disregard for their safety. Federal prosecutors argued that Hankison's act of firing blindly constituted unconstitutionally excessive force, a violation of the Fourth Amendment. They asserted that his actions demonstrated a clear disregard for the potential consequences and the safety of those inside and around the apartment. This shifted the legal focus of the case from state endangerment charges to federal civil rights violations, raising the stakes and broadening the scope of the legal scrutiny. This change in venue and charges reflected a deeper examination of the events of that night. After a lengthy trial and careful deliberation, a jury ultimately found him guilty on the federal charges. This verdict marked a significant turning point in the case and a victory for those seeking accountability. This guilty verdict then led to the sentencing phase, where a judge would determine whether Hankison would serve time in prison for his actions, a decision that carried immense weight and significance. Brett Hankison's case became a national flashpoint, igniting passionate debates about police accountability, the use of force, and the value of civil rights in America. The outcome of his case was seen as a bellwether for future cases involving police misconduct. On March 13, 2020, police executed a no-knock warrant at Breonna Taylor's apartment, targeting a former boyfriend who was already in custody elsewhere. The no-knock entry, now banned in Louisville, led to chaos. Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, startled awake, believed intruders were breaking in. Walker fired a single shot, hitting an officer, prompting police to unleash over 30 bullets in return. Breonna Taylor, unarmed, was killed in the crossfire. Hankison, moving to the side of the building, fired 10 shots blindly through covered doors and windows, endangering neighbors but hitting no one else. His reckless actions became the basis for his termination and federal charges. After Hankison's state acquittal, the U.S. Department of Justice launched a broader investigation into the Louisville Metro Police Department. The federal case focused on deprivation of civil rights under color of law, not murder or manslaughter. Hankison was charged with using excessive force by firing blindly, violating the Fourth Amendment rights of Taylor, Walker, and their neighbors. The trial featured testimony from officers, experts, and neighbors, painting a harrowing picture of the raid. Prosecutors argued Hankison's actions were reckless and unconstitutional. The defense claimed he was protecting fellow officers. The jury sided with the prosecution, convicting Hankison on both counts. The verdict was a landmark, affirming that federal law can hold officers accountable when state charges fail. For many, it validated the argument that the raid was a profound violation of basic rights. As sentencing neared, the Department of Justice shocked many by recommending just 1 day in prison for Hankison. This lenient request, signed by a new political appointee, was a dramatic departure from typical federal sentencing for civil rights violations. Career prosecutors who tried the case did not sign the memo, signaling internal disagreement. The memo argued Hankison acted in a chaotic situation, downplaying the severity of his actions. The recommendation was widely condemned by Taylor's family, civil rights leaders, and the public as an insult to justice. The final decision now rested with the judge, who had to weigh the jury's verdict against the government's surprising request. Judge Rebecca Grady Jennings forcefully rejected the DOJ's 1-day recommendation, calling it inappropriate given the gravity of the crime. She emphasized that Hankison's actions were not a split-second mistake, but a conscious decision to fire blindly into a home. The judge called it a grave abuse of police power and a reckless disregard for life. She stressed that a meaningful sentence was needed to promote respect for the law and deter similar conduct. Jennings highlighted the community's pain and the erosion of trust in law enforcement. A 1-day sentence, she said, would only deepen public mistrust. By imposing 33 months, she sent a clear message: civil rights violations by police carry real consequences. The decision was celebrated as a victory for accountability and judicial independence. Before sentencing, Brett Hankison addressed the court, expressing remorse for the raid's tragic outcome. He claimed he believed his fellow officers were under attack and that he never intended harm. Hankison spoke of the pressures officers face and offered condolences to Taylor's family. However, he stopped short of admitting his actions, firing blindly, were wrong. Taylor's family felt his apology lacked true acceptance of responsibility. The judge focused on the facts. Hankison fired 10 times without a clear target, endangering lives and violating rights. His words did not sway the court's decision. The sentence reflected the seriousness of his actions, not his explanation. Breonna Taylor's death was initially a local tragedy, but soon became a national rallying cry for justice. After George Floyd's death, protests erupted nationwide, with Taylor's case at the center. In Louisville, sustained demonstrations led to major reforms, including a ban on no-knock warrants and a $12 million settlement with Taylor's family. The case spurred a federal investigation into the police department, uncovering patterns of civil rights violations. Taylor's story resonated across the country, highlighting the dangers Black women face in police encounters. "Arrest the Cops Who Killed Breonna Taylor" became a symbol of the demand for accountability. The 33-month sentence handed down to Brett Hankison is undoubtedly significant, marking a pivotal moment in a case that has gripped the nation. It's a sentence that carries weight, not just for Hankison, but for the broader conversation surrounding police accountability. But its meaning is complex, layered with nuances and unanswered questions. It's a sentence that prompts reflection on the justice system itself. It marks a rare instance, a departure from the norm, of a police officer actually serving time for actions taken in the line of duty, or what was perceived as such. Specifically, it's for a federal civil rights violation stemming from a fatal raid that shook the community and ignited widespread protests. The judge's rejection of leniency in this case powerfully affirms that violating the constitutional rights of any citizen is a serious crime with serious consequences. It underscores the importance of upholding the law, regardless of position or authority. Yet it's crucial to remember that Hankison was not convicted for the actual death of Breonna Taylor, a point of contention for many. Furthermore, other officers involved in the raid were never charged with any crime, leaving a lingering sense of injustice in the eyes of the public. This has left many with a profound sense of incomplete justice, a feeling that true accountability remains elusive. The pursuit of justice continues. The case, however, did spark national reforms and a renewed focus on police practices, including bans on the controversial use of no-knock warrants in certain jurisdictions. It also led to a federal consent decree in Louisville, aimed at overhauling the police department's policies and practices. But the fight for lasting systemic change continues, driven by activists and community members determined to prevent future tragedies. And so, the story of Breonna Taylor remains a powerful call for deeper, more meaningful reform within our law enforcement systems. The sentence, while significant, offers only a degree of legal closure to a case filled with pain and unanswered questions. But the work of honoring her memory, demanding justice, and advocating for change unequivocally goes on, fueled by a collective desire for a more equitable future. Breonna Taylor's legacy serves as a constant reminder that the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process, a marathon rather than a sprint, demanding unwavering commitment and persistent effort. It's a reminder that every life must be valued and protected equally under the law, and that true justice requires constant vigilance and reform.